today we're going to be talking about how COVID-19 is affecting restaurants, employees, owners, and just the industry as a whole in Lexington. And we have a few people here who are in the restaurant sector. We have Dan Wu, who is a chef and owner of Atomic Ramen. Alex Canada, I'll let you introduce yourselves. Alex Canada from Commonwealth, and Becca Self from Foodchain. So they're kind of our guest speakers, our resident experts. And then if we want to go around, just everyone who's also in this conversation meeting, we'll just quickly state your name and how maybe why you're here in this conversation, what you want to learn, and then we'll have the guest speakers just speak, talk a few minutes about what they're experiencing and how they're dealing with this. And then we'll just open it up to everyone and we can just all kind of have a free-form conversation about this topic. Does that sound good? Pretty good. Okay, cool. Whoever wants to start first, go.
Go for it, Dan.
Oh no, I'm usually alphabetically last, so I'm used to going last. This is Dan Wu from Atomic Ramen. I'm in this conversation because A, I'm part of the restaurant industry, and B, we're working with a lot of really great folks on different programs to help people in the industry in general, restaurants at large, and out of work restaurant workers as well. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure.
I'm Alex Canada, and I am from a cup of Commonwealth. And yeah, I'm also just kind of like Dan, cafes are a part of the restaurant industry right now. And so just kind of figuring out life, how that looks right now, and collaborating with a lot of awesome people from the city.
And I'm Becca with Foodchain. I am not part of the restaurant world, so I feel slightly like an imposter of being in this conversation. But Foodchain is very connected with a lot of the hospitality industry and have worked with them as partners and are trying to think in this new crisis of how we can be relevant and how we can support our local expertise when it comes to food service and hospitality, and at the same time work to make sure that the ballooning population that is hungry or on the margins or in need of food can be served. So really matchmaking as much as possible, but using the assets that we have at our disposal for the best outcome.
What about the other folks that are on the call? Any that are not one of the guest speakers? Everyone should introduce themselves.
Yeah, Richard.
Jump in. Oh, hi, I'm Richard with CivicLex.
Okay, my name's Megan. I'm also with CivicLex.
Lisa Atkins with Bluegrass Community Foundation, and I'm just intensely interested in the topic.
Hey, Lisa.
I'm Sarah Trapp. I'm also a CivicLex.
Hi, I'm Matt Wilson at UK.
Hi, Matt. I know there are more of you on the call. I see you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Alex. I'm Becca and Dan, but just more Alex.
I'm Bonnie Schwab. Used to work in the restaurant industry, and now I'm at BCTC.
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie.
I'm Lucian. I work at UK, but I'm just looking for ideas for how to support folks in the community.
Awesome.
Is that everybody? I think that was.
I think there's one more person, but we'll let them get away with it.
So I've got a few questions. It's whatever kind of works better for you all. I've got about 9 questions. We want to go that way, or if people just want to jump in, kind of have the questions just in case people were a little bit shy about speaking up. Do you want to do we have a lot of questions in the group? What do y'all think? And I can't hear.
I don't think we're a shy bunch.
Okay. Yeah, so we can just jump in. I
don't know.
I guess first off, I was going to ask,
I think,
like, how
you know, I can't speak for the entire industry, obviously, but I. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Megan, were you going to ask something?
Yeah, sorry. There's a lag a little bit on my computer. I was just going to ask, like, to start it, like, how has your business been affected by COVID-19 so far? Just to jump in.
My business personally, with Atomic Ramen, I've been officially closed for just over a week, about 9 days now. We have a location out at the summit that we completely shuttered as of last Monday night, laid off all of my people. And then I also have a location on UK's campus. We were supposed to come back in some form of partial strength this week, the week after UK spring break, but UK's essentially canceled and everybody's off campus now. So that also dried up. So basically every source of revenue I have as a brick and mortar business and as a catering business is gone. So all my people are laid off. So I've been throwing all of my efforts into all this nonprofit work that's going on now.
Mm-hmm. And how are you, like, how are your employees? I guess, has everyone filed for unemployment, or like, how are you dealing with that? And yourself too, how are you making up for that revenue?
Yeah, so my employees, I know several of them have filed for unemployment. I don't know about everybody. I gave them all the resources and all the links to it, told them that a lot of the restrictions on unemployment applications would be off, so most of them would have a really good shot at it. And then as of yesterday or the day before, Bashir came down and basically said self-employed people can now apply for unemployment, so that includes me as well. So that's something I'm gonna look into. I'm okay and financially, personally. I can't speak for the business because the business right now doesn't exist. So obviously I'm not paying my rent for the next foreseeable months. I've got at some point I'm gonna, I guess, shut off my power and water and gas. I'm not 100% sure. Everything feels up in the air, and I don't want my kitchen to go to waste because it's a built up facility that can feed people. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of reticent to shut everything completely down if I'm not really sure which direction we're going. And I think that's probably the biggest heartache for really all business owners, is we have no idea where the end of the tunnel is right now. So it makes it impossible for us to make any sort of plan.
Mm-hmm. Alex, are you seeing the same sorts of things?
Yeah, so we had 3 stores and we had to close 2 of them as of last week. And so we're just kind of pushing all of our efforts into the downtown location. And we are really just trying to take care of our employees. We had to cut the hours of, I think it was about 32 employees. We had to kind of bring down to 0 hours. So it's super bare bones, kind of just the management staff handling it for the time being, and we're trying to add people in as we can. So our first priority is taking care of our baristas and figuring that out, and really just trying to make sure that they get through this to the end, and then hopefully being able to get our other stores open at some point as well.
Mm-hmm. Becca, how about you? How's Foodchain responded?
Well, so I think like I was saying earlier, we are not part of the restaurant industry. So there's a parallel world going on in the nonprofit industry of what does the future of philanthropy look like? In this avalanche of need, we don't want to be competing with local businesses and all that kind of stuff for a finite number of dollars and support. But specifically because of Foodchain's mission about forging community with fresh food, very, very early on, basically as soon as it was clear that the schools were going to shut down, because our focus is around community, we tried to figure out, okay, well, while our normal routes and programs of connecting food to community are not viable right now, what is the way we can be of use? And I think that is kind of the heart of any nonprofit, right? Is like, how do we serve a need? So we have really restructured. We've tried to figure out again, what do we have at our disposal? From a financial standpoint, it's a little bit tricky because I do think this is such a global epidemic that there are still funders out there who are desperate to and see so much need and such mounting need, but try to figure out a way to help people in a way that is valid, heaven forbid, in a way that's safe. So it's questioning a lot of the previous models of prioritizing efficiency and mass production and, let's just make a whole lot of commodity food and get everybody in a big room and get it out the door. It's all different permutations. So it's a lot of, aside from the terrifyingness of it, it is a lot of problem solving. And inventorying of what is out there. How do we string these things together? I think Foodchain does that fairly well. And even more importantly, our team is really, really hardworking of trying to figure out what can I physically do in this space. So we've changed a lot of we changed everything about our daily operations, but primarily, again, trying to pivot to what we could do. So being able to prepare meals, that was kind of a no-brainer, but then also leaning on our community ties of how can we distribute those safely, who's already on the front lines, who is a trusted face, who knows where the need is, how can we distribute that in a way that is where people need it. How can we tap into, different ingredients, those sorts of things? How can we scale up? How can we create a model? Where are the gaps? We're trying to figure out where are people going hungry? How can we plug in resources that will allow them to not be as hungry? Figuring out stuff with school lunches for next week when spring break is happening. So yeah, I think we're just constantly scanning the landscape of where are their needs and how can we plug into them.
Mm-hmm. And have you found that need grow? I'm assuming you have, just based on, how is that? What does that look like for you?
Sure. It's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations this week because we have so many dear friends within the restaurant community. We're used to thinking, and I think the local food scene in Lexington is so generous, and Dan, of course, is part of this. We're used to thinking of where we have excess and how can we get it to where there is a lack. And all of a sudden, those streams have come together, right? So people with expertise in preparing food now don't have jobs and suddenly have needs themselves. So in some ways, it's put everything in the blender of we are all now on the need side in some way, even if it's just I need some mental support. But how do we stitch together the expertise that we still have, right? This virus didn't take away anybody's know-how and anybody's skills. We just have to figure out a way to utilize those skills where everybody can feel valued and contributing, taking away stigmas of needing help, but also using the resources that are already in place. So we may not be able to interact in the way that we did before, but we still know people and we still can do that in a safe way. It just looks different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dan, do you want to speak a little bit about your work, sort of organizing people in the restaurant industry and setting up support networks for them?
Yeah, sure. We kind of started with one project and kind of morphed into another. We started off, it seems like a million years ago now, but it's only literally been a couple of weeks. We started a thing called LexUnite.com where we kind of centralized gift card sales for all kinds of different food related businesses on one page. We made this really great video that had all these different Lexington food people involved. And so we got that started and then immediately kind of pivoted towards the idea of feeding people, knowing that we had restaurants closing one by one all over the place who would have excess food that they wanted to get rid of, along with people going out of work and people with, as Becca said, knowledge and know-how about how to feed people, but no business way to do it anymore. And as we were in the middle of figuring this stuff out, Samantha Four is part of our team, and she said, "Hey, we just got some money from the Lea Initiative." And I misheard her because I didn't think that was possible. So I said, "Well, how do we convert our plan into like a grant proposal so we can get some money from Lea Initiative?" And she said, "No, we got money from the Lea Initiative. We're a part of the Lea Initiative." And I said, "What? Okay." So that's how things happened. So we literally started as if you want to think about the Lea Initiative. So it was started by Chef Edward Lee out of Louisville, and he has restaurants in Louisville and Washington, D.C. But now I think the initiative is in 14 cities. They're growing like crazy. You can look at it almost as a franchise model. We're basically taking a local restaurant, converting it into a restaurant workers relief center where we're basically cooking food and handing out meals and handing out household supplies like tampons and toilet paper and baby food, things like that. So we literally started last night. We're operating out of the Great Bagel on Boston Road. And every night of the week, 5 to 7 p.m., we're handing out household supplies and we're handing out meals to people in the industry. We're asking for pay stubs so we can see that somebody works in the hospitality industry. But ultimately, we're not going to turn anybody away. If you show up, at our curbside, you'll get something.
How did you have a lot of people show up for that?
Yeah, I wasn't there last night, but we gave out, I think we were shooting for 200 to 300 meals, and I think we gave out just under 200 meals, along with a bunch of household supplies. So right now for us, the greatest need is money, volunteers, and donations of goods. Donations of goods also includes like food. We've had a lot of great generous donations of food from places like Creation Gardens, which is a regional supplier to the restaurant industry. All kinds of restaurants have donated supplies and disposable containers and, paper goods, all kinds of stuff. We've gotten money donations and gotten donations of things like diapers and household stuff. So it's all coming in, but it's a nonstop need, and I can foresee the need growing day by day.
Where can people drop off supplies if they want to donate, or how can they volunteer to or sign up to volunteer?
Yeah. So Great Bagel on Boston Road is where you can drop off physical donations. Go to leainitiative.com to donate money. On there, you can choose and you can click on the Restaurant Workers Relief Fund, and then there's a pull down menu. You can select Lexington specifically to fund out of all the 14 cities. And then in terms of volunteers, we're tweaking that a little bit, but we'll be throwing that out there on social media. If you look for hashtag Lea Initiative or hashtag Lex Unite. Right now, what we're looking for in terms of volunteers are people with food handlers permits, and then we're trying to put a emphasis on bilingual volunteers as well. People can speak more than one language because we want to make sure that different communities and immigrant communities aren't being left out of this whole process.
Do you have an idea of the time span that it could go as well? Like, or is it set up that it can go, if this lasts for months, that it can still support people for that long?
Yeah. So basically, the Lea Initiative, initially, the seed money is funded by Maker's Mark, who have generously donated a ton of money to the whole national program, and then each little individual satellite city outpost, if you will, or franchise, we get a certain amount of money to start, and then we're partly on our own for raising money, and then we can, I don't know exactly what the process is for drawing more funds from Lea Initiative itself, so we're going to try to operate lean and mean the way we know how in the restaurant industry, and try to operate for as long as possible, honestly. So there's no timeline to it. We're going to run as long as we can run.
That's fantastic. Alex, I haven't sort of been left out. I feel like I wanted to bring you back in. Like how has Cup of Commonwealth sort of restructured, and like what are you finding successful for you, and like just what changes have you seen, and how are you dealing with that, and what's working and what's not, and how are you how are you adapting?
So it really felt like we went from business as usual to having to go into survival mode and adjust everything, within days, sometimes within hours. It felt like we were changing the plan, really having to learn how to adapt. Right now we're doing curbside all day at our downtown location. We did kind of adjust the hours, so we close at 5 p.m. And then 1 p.m. on Sunday. But so curbside, they can call in their order, they can walk up to the door and we'll take their order. And then we're also doing deliveries from 8 to 1 every day. And it's within a 3-mile radius. So right now like I said before, we kind of are just bare bones with staff. But we have been able to bring a few people back. I think we're up to 10 as of this weekend, which we started with 5 last week. So just kind of helping to facilitate some of that. And as cars are kind of coming up and as phone calls are coming in, and then we've also really revamped our online store. So we're kind of pushing people to that if they want to buy a tab for the future, if they want to, or right now, if they want to buy a gift card, or just different coffees or merchandise, we have that available as well. But yeah, it's been really interesting, and we've had to kind of roll with the punches every day, and go from initially just saying like, oh, we'll sanitize everything 10 times as much as we were already, or we'll start doing this social distance stuff, and then having to really move into, okay, this is normal right now. So.
What have your numbers been like? How comparing like February and March? Is it starting to pick up now? Like you were saying, you're getting more orders in, but as for like compared to a normal, sort of this time in a normal year, what has this done to your business?
Right. So, since we are part of the restaurant industry, and the restaurant industry as a whole, I think is down like 50 to 70%. And so we are a part of that. We are feeling it. As a company, it is drastically different from what it was a year ago this time, or like even a month ago. But really, it's been just incredible to see people come by and support, and just to see our friends, our customers, kind of rally and really help us out. I think there's just been like so many cool things from people who went to the Georgetown location regularly. They're driving all the way to Lexington to see us, and they're just in the car, they pull up and we give them their drink, and then they're like, all right, bye, like good to see you, which is really wonderful. And we've had customers who we had one customer who paid with a $50 bill for a coffee and told us to keep the change, and he did that like 3 or 4 days in a row. And so it's just been really cool. Lots of really, I think, tearjerker moments that have shown up even in the midst of us kind of being in that survival mode.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Just like we're trying to get through this, and like we're getting through it together. I know, Dan, like that kind of brings me, like we were talking on the phone the other day, and I wanted to ask all of you, sort of, was there anything about sort of Lexington's food and beverage community that makes it more the storm like more weatherable, or like what was, what I mean? I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think in the best of times, we were a very cohesive food community. When a new restaurant would open, other restaurateurs would rally and promote them and help them. You would see bars and coffee shops doing like tap takeover type things where they're collaborating instead of competing. So I've always felt like Lexington has had a really great, very supportive, tight-knit community. And it really proved itself in times like this where things are just crazy and terrible for everyone. And what you're seeing a lot of is people coming out and not just saying, hey, help my business, help me survive, but help us survive, help the whole community survive. Hey, help these other businesses, There was a TV interview with Kevin Heathcote from Bourbon and Toulouse that said something, I'm breaking down in tears a couple of days over something these days, but it really hit me because we were talking about Lex Unite, and we were talking about the gift cards, and he said, Bourbon and Toulouse has been around for like 15 years. I'm feeling really bad for the people who have only been open a couple of years. We have our feet underneath us. We'll be okay. don't buy gift cards from us, go buy gift cards from these newer, smaller places. And then in the comment section of that post, multiple people also said that, like, don't worry about us, we'll be okay, go support somebody else. And that's so heartening to see that the community really does kind of come together. And this feeding program and other programs, you'll see, like, you know, you can attest to Foodchain, you know, their kitchen, besides their regular paid staff, there are volunteers right now who are basically out of work cooks and chefs from other restaurants. They're not standing around feeling sorry for themselves. They're putting themselves to work to help the community, whether or not for money. So it's been great to see.
Is that what you're experiencing as well, Alex and Rebecca?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's not accidental, the people who end up working in food. You know, there is, at its very basic, food is about nourishment. It is about connecting with one another. So I think it is a self-segregating population of people who work with food from many, many different paths that arrive at food as something where you see the much bigger benefits in working in it. And so, I mean, I agree with Dan. I think it's incredibly heartening and emotional to see the rawness of it. And yet it is very familial. And you know, we always talk about, I've said many, many times before, one of my favorite party questions is to ask people about their favorite food memory. And I've been asking that question for years. I've never had someone answer of eating anything alone. You know, there is something is always around being with someone else as you enjoy that meal or that drink or what have you. And so I think we're seeing that rippling out. I mean, the economics are terrifying, and I think not knowing where this is going is even more overwhelming, let alone the health fears. But food is really grounding. And so I think there is some solidarity and some assurance of that, and why people are so quick to figure out how can they feed someone, you know, at strip it all away. How can we feed someone? And, you know, it's really hard. Like, I can't share a meal with someone in the same way I would have before, but we can share expertise. We can share ingredients. We can find a way to work within these new parameters, and hopefully they won't last forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we've really just appreciated when businesses are really thinking about the people first, because I think that, you know, that's really what all of our goals should be, right? Like whether it's a nonprofit or a restaurant, a cafe, whatever, like, people is the important part. So I think when restaurants then as they're prioritizing their staff and prioritizing the people who they come in contact with, I think that's just super important. And it really makes a difference long term. And like Becca was saying, like that familial kind of thing, it really is cool to see people kind of coming together with a common cause of, you know, not just like, I want my business back open, which of course we do, but like, we're taking care of our people. How can we help you take care of your people? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just so cool to see that response, like, throughout the city. I did want to ask, like, are there any support measures? And Dan, this is another one we talked about on the phone call. Are there any support measures out there to help restaurants make up for lost revenues? And we talked a little bit about the Small Business Association and loans. So if you want to talk a little bit about loans and why, you know, the sort of pros and cons about that, and like what restaurants can do with that and what they can't do, like how far those measures can go, because it sounds like it's not quite enough, and it's not accessible to everyone.
Yeah, it's not only for me, from my point of view, it's not only not enough, but I don't know if it's the right approach, because as a small business owner, when I think about a loan, I'm looking to open a restaurant or expand a restaurant or do some sort of growth measure. It's a positive thing that I want to do, that I need some infusion of cash to do. It's the way I implement a plan. Right now, things are so uncertain. Nobody has a plan. I don't know what the future of Atomic Ramen looks like in a month, in 2 months, in a year. I have no idea. So the idea of me taking out a loan, no matter how low the interest rate is right now, me taking out a loan feels absurd, because what am I supposed to do with it right now? Am I going to move to a different location? Am I buying equipment? Am I hiring people? Like, I'm not doing any of those things. What am I supposed to do with a loan? That's the frustrating thing. I think the loan comes into play a few months from now, hopefully a few months from now, when things are returning to some level of normalcy. That's when the loans come in. Right now, everybody is in survival mode. What I want is for my employees to get paid in one way or another, whether that's unemployment or some other benefit from local, state, or federal government. I need for my employees to be okay and to keep being able to pay their rent and put food on their table when I'm not able to provide that anymore as an employer. We need assistance for the businesses themselves that, we're going to continue to have bills, even though we're not bringing. So we need that help to survive to the point where a loan becomes useful. And right now, it's really not. So I feel like the approaches coming on from on high are a bit misguided.
What does that go for the grants too? Because I know we had posted on our CivicLex website that there was how much was it? 100 million? I can't remember how much from Facebook for small business grants, but it's sort of the same. It's at least something you don't have to pay back, but it's still not.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to get it.
Well, that's the huge difference, isn't it? Yeah. So for me, like if I were to apply for a grant, it would literally just be to keep this concept, this storefront or this business afloat until the point where I can reopen, at which point I'll probably need more funds to reopen, because it's not like time was stopped. I just start right back as normal. I have to buy equipment. I have to buy food. I have to hire people back. I have to train new people because I'm not going to get all those people back. There are all kinds of other startup costs. I might end up having to move, you know what I mean? If I have to move out of my space for whatever reason. So there are a lot of costs associated with it.
So what do restaurants, if you could just, your wish list, I guess, or if you could just ask for something and get it, what do restaurants need right now? Is it just cash? You just need cash pretty much.
I think so. Yeah, honestly, it's cash. If I didn't have any, costs, if I didn't have bills to pay and rent to pay and taxes to pay, then I guess I'd be okay for right now. I personally can get along okay. But it really is. It's just to keep things afloat. We're not able to move in a forward direction right now because we don't know what forward looks like right now because the waters are so murky and dangerous. So we just need to stay afloat. And if we can't stay afloat, then we sink. And then several months later, when the health crisis blows over, it could be a really devastating landscape of, I've heard numbers thrown around. I don't know what they're based on, but, that 3/4 of small businesses could be done for good for all we know. I don't know what that landscape looks like. It's terrifying to think about.
And Alex and Rebecca and Dan as well, I guess thinking of restaurants and employees, how can Lexington best support you? Was a question I had.
I think, people have already been really showing up, which is awesome. We did set up a Venmo account specifically for the employees that we had to drop their hours down to 0. So people were kind of asking how they could help. And what we're doing with that is every $5 that's donated, we're matching it with a pay it forward that someone can use now or later. And it's just like any drink for anybody. So that's a big way that people can help if they want to. It's on our social media. You can find it. But I think even just continuing to come by, continuing to buy gift cards or tabs, and even just the people who are checking up on us and texting us. I think those are they seem really small, and it's maybe that's not money in that moment, but that is encouragement for us to keep going forward. I think that's so helpful. And yeah, just the constant coming by is really, really wonderful for us.
Yeah.
My role as a director of a nonprofit is always to talk about the ways in which people can support the mission of our work. I mean, we are a 501c3, so people can make tax deductible donations through our website, which is foodchainlex.org. But at this point in time, I feel like we are really just a conduit of trying to help people who are on the margins. So, this isn't about trying to keep food chain afloat at this point. This is really just about buying ingredients and to-go containers and being able to pay somebody to prepare those meals if it's beyond the capacity that we do. So in terms of how to help support all these people on the call, support our local businesses. I do think that nonprofits have different angles that we can pull from, but again, like no one knows what is ahead. So I think we're kind of in a similar boat of, well, let's work on this 24-hour plan and then see how the sands shift and how the water rises tomorrow, and then what new needs open up that we can try to bring a Band-Aid to a hospital with. Not get demoralized by what seems like an overwhelming amount of challenges, but just mend what we can. And I'm really grateful to be doing this in this community, because I do think everyone is bringing their Band-Aids to the hemorrhaging wound. And while we're not going to stop it, at least it's not just going unchecked.
Is there anything just the general public can do for food chain? I know probably just always donations are one thing.
Yeah.
But do you need like personnel support or supplies or?
Right now our big need is donations for a couple of different projects we're working on. We realized actually a couple weeks ago when the public schools announced their bus bite program that they weren't going to be providing meals during spring break. And we thought we had another avenue to fund that, and it turns out that we don't. So we've tried to figure out actually the needs is well beyond the capacity that Food Chain could prepare, but we're trying to work with other local entities and restaurants and caterers that could potentially contract to prepare those meals. And then Food Chain can help figure out the logistics for that. So just today, I know it's ridiculous. The timelines are obscene on this, but starting on Monday, we launched There's No Break for Hunger, trying to figure out ways of funding the preparation of those meals so we can distribute those safely. That's a big thing that we're working on right now. But then going forward, we've been preparing since last Tuesday between 200 and 300 meals a day out of Food Chain's kitchen. We think we can really ramp that up and potentially involve more and more food expertise in preparing those meals, but also helping to find the need and distribute those safely. So, there's I feel like we're doing a lot of logistics of restructuring. And in some ways, that's a great way where people can help. But it's also figuring out, okay, you know what? Who knows where to-go containers are now? It's so funny. Like toilet paper was this insane thing,
Right.
and like within the food sector now, it's like who's got a line to to-go containers, things like that.
Who can they? If someone does have a line on this kind of stuff, like who can they contact? To get that to you all. What's a contact for you? If someone wants to
contact for us. So our website is foodchainlex.org. We set up a new email address that actually points to a bunch of people because not everybody's at their computer all the time right now. Which is just help@foodchainlex.org. So that's an easy way for people to get to us.
Awesome. Yeah. I wanted to open it up to anyone else here in the conversation. Does anyone have any questions or want, have something to say, have experience that they want to share? Jump in. No.
I'll jump in. I feel like you always need
nobody.
Someone. Sorry, Dan. What were you saying?
Go.
I feel like you always kind of need someone to jump in, mix it up to get anyone to feel comfortable talking. So I actually have a question for Becca. And this is something that I've been, so you can go ahead and prepare to unmute your mic, Becca. This is something that I've been kind of thinking about and talking with some other folks in the past few days. And it's like, how do you as a nonprofit executive, right, like think about both this immediate term and think about this sort of very long trajectory of your organization? And how do you hold both of those things at the same time? Or do you? Or is it just like everything's dropped for you all to just focus on this crisis now?
I mean, the most raw answer is there is like, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the long-term trajectory is. I think as a nonprofit, I've had numerous conversations this week and continue to be like percolating of how, this is our overarching mission for the IRS is forging links between community and fresh food. I think what we're doing now still fits within that. So we got to make sure that our mission hasn't drifted so far that we're like now doing something that we're not meant to be doing. But, a huge piece of what Foodchain does, and this is my background, is education. So I've been having conversations with my team, which everybody is basically like put on a different hat right now. How do we, as the weeks continue on, how do we bring in education into this? So it is, I think, a like triage situation first of like, okay, what like the hierarchy of needs, I'm not going to be out there talking about, well, this is how we can build an aquaponic system if someone is starving. And yet, as this continues, and we maybe can like put a tourniquet on for the most dramatic things and figure out some systems for that. How can we bring in education, and how can we take this as an opportunity to have some way bigger conversations of like, hey, you know what? This brought to light some pretty like bad circumstances. So for example, with this school lunch thing, right? If there's anything that comes out of this, I certainly hope that we can have a larger societal conversation in this country of like the idea that hunger for our families is in some way tied on our public school system is, pardon my words, asinine, right? Like the fact that shutting the school system, New York couldn't shut their school system because they have so many homeless kids that would otherwise starve. Like that is a burden that is not right. That is an injustice. Same thing with employment and healthcare, right? Like of letting people go, what's going to happen to their healthcare? Like these are like this social safety net, like not to get too much on a soapbox, but like if something can come from this, it is like we need better systems in place. And telling our public school superintendent, hey, we're going to need you to figure out a logistics system where your bus drivers are figuring out how to feed hungry kids. Like, what the heck? Like, oh, and by the way, figure out tele-learning. And saying to employers, you don't know how you're going to pay your electric bill next month, but hopefully your employees who you no longer can pay can also afford to get treatment. Like that, these are just unrealistic expectations. And I think we knew this all along, but it was really easy to, like, we patched it together in the most threadbare way that we could close our eyes to it. And now we can't. So I hope that Foodchain can help be part of those discussions, or at least tell people they better be ready to have those conversations because we're not going to forget about it. But also, from a personal mission, how do we get education into this? How do we, how can we get the see it as an opportunity for the public to be more connected with their food? This is a life skill. This isn't just a like passing hobby. If you particularly like arugula, like this is important.
I love arugula.
I do too. I always pick up.
I do have a just very small follow-up question to that. It's like, how do we actually almost cataloging and bookmarking like all of these inequities and insecurities in our system? How do we start to have a more systemic conversation about those issues around during this? Because after this, I feel like we're going to be triaging people who have lost branches of their families And like, you know, I mean, this could go on for a year or 2 years of dealing with the immediate crises.
Yeah.
So how do we start? And in the meantime, every day that our system continues to be set up this way is the liability just is starting to grow again. So how do we start to have that conversation now? As another nonprofit person, I'm interested in that.
I assume that CivicLex has like a Google Doc going.
Well, I can make one.
Yeah. That's my plan. I think
I'll start a Trello board for everyone.
I love the idea of like using education, like to have conversations about like how many kids. Like I know that we did the school funding sort of like info thing, just researching the amount of kids who are on like reduced lunch or free lunch at school. It was something that I didn't know, and it was way more kids than I had imagined. Yeah, so I think it's just a lot of this stuff people just have no idea it's going on, and now is unfortunately like a really like a perfect time. Like it's there, it's right in front of us, and we should talk about it. Well, we should talk about it now and like talk about it more.
And let's talk about the fact that, okay, so we have all these kids who we know are hungry. Guess what? There is no summer feeding program for their parents. Right. So like, if that's the best safety net we can offer to people who are hungry is because of data that says kids who have an empty stomach can't learn. Okay, well, let's get them a Pop-Tart. Like, we can do better than that. And that's, you know, what about our seniors? Like it's so threadbare. So yeah, I mean, I hate the idea of just like, oh, that's a problem. Let's yell about it and let's rant about it. But like, what are we as a society willing to accept and what are we not? And I think this circumstance will bring to bear, I mean, this flatten the curve thing, right? Like, all right, calling on your morals here now, right? Like partisan politics aside, like what is more important, the economy or your grandparents' lives or your children's lives or whatever, right? So we've been able to talk about things very theoretically and very arm's reach, and now it's like in our faces. So hopefully, you know, I still believe in the goodness of humanity. Hopefully we can have real, true conversations. I don't know.
I have like sort of a follow-up question with that to the rest of, to like Alex and Dan more so. Of just like, how do you imagine the restaurant industry addressing these same concerns? Of like, how do you make it like how do you imagine it to be like more sustainable and a little bit more, I don't want to say resilient, it's kind of a buzzword right now. But how do you do that? And is that even possible in the industry? Like, what do you think about that?
That's a great question. I've been thinking about that. I'm one of those people. I'm not naive or Pollyanna to think that we're going to resume business as usual in X number of months, that we're just going to open right back up and do what we did a year ago. I honestly think some fundamental things might have to change with the way we do business as small business owners, as restaurants. I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know how, you know, what we're doing right now as a local restaurant industry is people are coming together, helping each other out. We're getting all these donations, all these volunteers for this greater good. I don't want to see that go away when the health crisis goes away, because the food need will still be here. And I'm hoping, my hope is, and I'd love to hear from Alex on this as well, is, you know, these infrastructures that we're building right now and very much ad hoc and very much guerrilla style on the fly, they'll still exist when things return to normal, quote unquote. So how do we use those things? How do we be a part of a larger conversation that's not just about how do I run my business and make money again, but how can we be fully integrated into the community? And this, I think it's a great question for Alex, because Cup of Commonwealth has always been very much like tied into the community, everything they do.
Yeah, so I think that we're obviously like hopeful for what can come out of this, and I totally agree with what you all were saying about I hope that we kind of keep this collaboration going, keeping the good vibes, I guess, going even past when this is hopefully over. But we always kind of say you plan your work and you work your plan, and there are just going to be times that you're going to fall off. And I think this is one of those times where that's happening to everyone. We've kind of all fallen off our path. And so I think kind of figuring out, we have our mission statement, embrace community, serve others, create culture, and we're always trying to adapt everything around that. And so this week, that looks so different than it did last week. Probably next week, it's going to look different than it does this week. And so I do think there is part of the rolling with the punches a little bit where we're, able to accept that today's Friday, but tomorrow's Saturday, and the next day is Sunday, and it's totally going to be different. But
don't tell me what day it is, Alexandra.
But like within that, knowing that but what is the same is our mission. What is the same is this path that we are on, which is, in survival mode, fighting for our staff, fighting on behalf of people. And so, yeah, I think none of us obviously knows what's going to happen, and it's scary, but we do know that we can go to bed at night knowing that we fought to the best of our ability for people. So,
are you seeing that just throughout the restaurant community and food and beverage community of just the desire to keep up this kind of community support and close-knit sort of network that's developed in the past weeks? Do people across the board not wanting to go back into normal?
I think so. I don't know that most of us have the ability to look that far into the future. And honestly, there are plenty of people in the industry who are just figuring their own stuff out. And I am all about forgiving yourself and forgiving other people for doing what you got to do. I'm not going to guilt trip anybody for not being involved in any sort of community stuff if they're trying to figure out how to keep their lights on right now, and how to keep their people employed, and how to keep their bills paid. I begrudge nobody any of that. I'm in a weird position in a way that I'm fully out of business. So it actually, in a weird way, clears up my bandwidth and my energy to do some of this work. If I were right now still trying to survive and doing delivery and curbside and struggling with that, I probably wouldn't have the emotional energy to work on something like this, because I'm trying to see if I can get through another week of, doing 20, 30, 40% of the business that I'm supposed to be doing, just fighting to survive. So I think it's on different levels. Some of us have the ability and the privilege and the bandwidth to work on these sort of things, and some of us simply don't right now and are just struggling to get by. So it's kind of all over the map. But I think everybody's heart is still in the fight together, and everybody, when they can, they're always trying to help each other. Even these businesses who were struggling, going day to day, they're still wanting to donate, excess food or containers, or, throw us volunteers from their staff and things like that. So a lot of people are doing both.
And there's that phrase, I don't remember the exact words, but it's, high tides raise all ships. And we've always wanted, we've always tried to live that way, because it really is true. In the coffee industry, it doesn't benefit us at all to be the lone coffee shop. And so I think now, it doesn't benefit anyone to be, one of the few restaurants that survived. We all want everyone to survive, and for the people within the walls to survive and to thrive. So I think working together really does make a difference to help us all kind of get up there, as opposed to just some of us.
Anybody else like to add anything or any questions? We're about 3 minutes. It's 3:57, so we're about to end the meeting. But if anybody else would like to ask a question or share anything, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that now.
I have a quick question for Alex, if I can.
Sure.
I'd love to know, and I know we're all in survival mode and looking at today and tomorrow and not much further ahead. Have you all thought about whether or not your business model will change after the health crisis is over, or if you will try to remain the same, or what adaptations or ideas have you thought about? Because I've been thinking about Atomic Ramen, and I don't know if Atomic Ramen will return in its current form, if that's even possible, or if that's what I want, depending on what the climate looks like. So I'm curious to what the conversations have been for you guys.
Yeah, nothing obviously is for sure. I think one thing we did realize was we've kind of talked about doing delivery for a long time, and this super forced our hand. So I think that we were able to kind of be like, oh, this can work. And honestly, even curbside stuff has not, it's not been as hard to kind of train people as maybe we thought it would have been. So I don't know exactly what we'll end up doing. I'm not sure what we will carry over, but I think that this has shown us that we are capable of a few more ways of serving customers. So yeah, that's a good question. I'm kind of excited to see what we can do, and we'll probably try to like add in things as it comes. So yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. As best as anybody right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought, Richard, do you have anything to add? Your mic was off. I was like, oh, you wanted to say something, but you might not.
Oh, no, I just forgot to turn it. I forgot to mute myself.
Okay. Becca, do you, from your perspective, do you have kind of do you have a comment for that? But going forward, do you see? I guess Richard asked that. We've sort of already talked about that. But are you thinking of changing the way like Foodchain not operates, but just the future of Foodchain and changes that it might make?
We are going to keep feeding the fish, and one day at a time, quite literally.
That's all we can do. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here and participating today and taking the time to join in this meeting. I know it's kind of weird because we don't do this every day. We're all pretty new to it. But I think I learned a lot, and I hope other people did. And I just want to thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I do have one thing.
Yeah,
I do have one thing I want to add before people jump off. Is that we're going to be having another one of these next week on Wednesday, it looks like, focusing on the nonprofit sector with Lisa from the Community Foundation, who's on this call, and Danielle Clore from the Kentucky Nonprofit Network. So talking about how this is impacting nonprofits.
And I would add, if anyone has a question, sorry, if anyone has a question or like had something they wanted to address, but maybe like didn't want to speak up or just we didn't have time, email us at, what did you say, info@civiclex.org, info@civiclex.org, with any question you might have, and we will get you pointed in the right direction, have it answered or addressed.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coordinating this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for participating.
Yep,
Well, have a
thank
good
you.
day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye.